Cool. Sorry about the very minor technical difficulties. And again, welcome to the Open Library Community Celebration for 2022. I'm going to kick it off by sharing some slides. Anyone know the Mac shortcut for full screen on browser? Is it F11?
I just double click the top bar and it goes.
Great, I'll do that. All right.
For you.
the green dot on the upper right and the upper left.
Perfect. Okay, so here we are at the Open Library Community Celebration for 2022, celebrating 15 years since the Open Library project was first demoed over at the Berkman Klein Center for a luncheon on the East Coast. If you want to follow along on these slides, you can go to openlibrary.org/OLCC 2022. And if you click that, it'll bring you to the same thing that you're seeing right here. I imagine everyone on this call right now is already familiar with the Internet Archive, so I'll go pretty quickly. But for anyone who may be watching from home, the Open Library is a project of the nonprofit Internet Archive. We run a handful of different projects, including the Wayback Machine, a TV news archive, a whole live music archive, and of course, Open Library and Perl and other projects as well. One of the more popular services that we run is called the Wayback Machine. It allows you to search for a URL and see what it looked like back through time for historical purposes. And so here is Google in 1998 when it was first launched. The Internet Archive is also a library. So pre-pandemic, we were digitizing around 50,000 books a month. And so whenever you go to archive.org or Open Library and loan a book, you are borrowing one edition of that book pinned to one of the physical books that we purchased or was donated to us in our archives. And the way that it works is all the way at the beginning of the process, we have engineers and librarians who help wrangle card catalogs from lots of different sources and helps us build an index of the books that are out there. And then from that, a team identifies significant works that are culturally relevant or significant to our communities. And then we try to acquire those works. And then we employ practices like controlled digital lending to bring our physical books to life within the browser, and then make sure that they are available for loan using controlled practices. And then finally, there are partnerships with other libraries around the country that help us increase the number of holdings that might be available based on their capacity as well. And finally, we showcase these books on archive.org and also on Open Library. So Open Library is a catalog of every book ever published. It's similar to Goodreads in that it has a card catalog page for nearly every book. Of those, around 5 million are readable titles online that you could either borrow or loan. And the platform is open source, meaning lots of different people can contribute to it. And it is also a wiki, meaning that people who may notice a mistake on the catalog can edit the title or the author or make other changes. So the way that we got here, it's been, at least for me, it's been about a 5-year journey. Around 2016, 2017, the project underwent intensive care. We were really deciding how the direction should continue. And so we were planting the seeds and just trying to get the service up and running and stable. And after that, we began to realize that it was going to be very hard to run this service with a small engineering team. So we invested in rebooting an open source community of people who are really passionate about the Open Library project existing and making it easier for people to contribute and find ways to help. After that, we explored ways of democratizing the library's holdings. One way we did this was through the book sponsorship program. And then a second way was adding the want to read button And the Want to Read button gave patrons all around the world a voice into what books they wish we had that may not currently be available through the library. And then in 2022 or in 2020, once we had a community of folks working on the project and also mechanisms for the community to vouch for what they cared about, we decided to shift our focus onto discovery and adoption by book lovers. And that meant, how do we get the word out and make it more accessible to people all over the internet? And once it was accessible to people on the internet, we noticed a lot of challenges with either the quality of our catalog or the completeness of our catalog, and it encouraged us to focus on making Open Library the internet's open book catalog. How can we work with partners better? How can we make sure that our catalog is higher quality, that we have all of the books? And I think we've done a really good job at that by integrating with partner data sources like Better World Books and Amazon, et cetera. And so this year, we decided to go back to basics and improve the service design for our patrons. So in this case, what that means is focusing on 4 key elements of the Open Library platform. One is book pages. So when you go to Open Library and you click on a book, that is the most viewed experience on Open Library. And so we wanted to make sure that this works really well for our patrons, whether it's on mobile, desktop, no matter where they are in the world. And then we also wanted to make it as useful as possible and as easy as possible to find a book. And prior to 2022, the experience was, and I think many of you have probably hit this before, it's pretty frustrating. You search for a book like El Señor de los Anillos, Lord of the Rings in Spanish, and it'll show you that there's a book in Spanish, but when you click it, it brings you to the English edition, and it's kind of a letdown. And so this year we've been focusing on improving our search and discovery mechanisms to serve our core use cases. And then next, the third pillar is participation. How can we create features that are engaging more of the community to take the actions on Open Library that both serve themselves and others? So these are things like working together for librarianship tasks. Also, something we haven't announced yet, which we won't be talking about too much today, is yearly reading goals. And then finally, on 4 here, is core vitals. All of these other things are nice, but we need to make sure that imports are running, that our monthly backups are running, that our servers are getting upgraded. And a huge shout out to Chris Klaus, who has been helping with a lot of the core vitals this year and over the past few years. So because we've been able to make this progress over the last few years, we were able to make a big dent across all 4 verticals. We made progress on the book page design for mobile, the My Books page, which is where you go to see books that you're currently reading, already read, or want to read. We added search to My Books page. We improved the main site navigation across the whole website. We added new navigation to the search page. We created a completely new type of way to search on Open Library that focuses on editions rather than works, which gives you granularity at the language level, for instance, which also improves availability on Open Library. We have book list social previews, new ways of signing in and registering for Open Library, trending books, a librarian merge queue, a way for us internally to do account anonymization, which is a big deal. We have support for these things called webbooks and search in OPDS format. And there's a lot there, but fortunately, you're going to hear about each of these things from members of our community. So just a snapshot of velocity for Open Library. This year, we hit 6.1 million patrons and on Open Library, and we are doing around 400,000 loans each month. I think that's up by around 50 or 60,000 a month since last year. On Slack, which is the primary way where communication happens within the Open Library community, there are around 500 active members spread between 3 different channels. One is the Open Library G, which is the general channel for Open Library. We have a channel dedicated to librarians, and then a new channel that was co-founded, I'll say, by Hayun for open library design. And then the other place where a lot of work is done is on GitHub. We've had 30 active contributors this year, 20 who have been especially active, making more than 5 commits. And then we also have 350 people who have applied to volunteer with us this year. And of those, 6 fellows who have dedicated several months of their time to focus on a specific project and not only improve Open Library substantially for our patrons, but to earn an honorary fellowship role. So without further ado, let's hear from the folks who have helped make all of this happen, starting with Chris Klaus.
Hello there. So my name's Chris Klaus. I'm an American, but I'm based in Switzerland. And I work mostly on the back end of the system. So I don't really touch the web pages at all. I more work on the back end systems and the database work. So just some of the things that I've done in this year are we've worked on automating the way we gather data. So we actually create books and editions and works in an automated way. And now, you know, with the help of Mac, we've gotten to the point where we're importing 150,000 new items every month just by pulling information out of network resources. So that's part of, you know, the work that I do. The other thing, you know, our system, as Mech said, is relatively old. And so we've been doing a lot of upgrades over the past few years. And that occupies a fair amount of time, but it's rather rewarding because performance increases nicely as we make these upgrades. And I've been doing work this year on data caching. So if you ask for a book, we'll remember that. And if you ask for the book the second time, we won't even go to the database. We'll just pull it right out of memory. And that really speeds up the performance that visitors see when they do work with us. Part of the work this year has been on long-running jobs, which are called cron jobs. These are jobs that run in the background and do various things like save our data to the archive or catalog things. And these are complicated tasks. So we created a cron watcher. So basically, if any of these tasks have problems, we know about it. We're quickly alerted to the fact that something went wrong in a complicated long-running job. So today we're the 1st of November. So we're backing up all our data as we do every 1st of the month. And if that job goes awry today at any point, we will be alerted by it. And so we've worked a lot also on error reporting. So various errors can occur. And when errors occur, the system that catches those errors is a system called Sentry, which is a wonderful system, but it's not very good about letting us, the managers of the system, know that something's gone wrong. So now what we've created is a link between Sentry and Slack so that we get an instant message on our instant chat system that tells us that something's gone wrong. So what you'll see here at the bottom of the screen is an edition count has come in, a book has come in without an edition count. And so that's a problem. We need to solve it. And so I can quickly look at the problem and assign it to one of my coworkers or alert my coworkers about the problem. And then we've done a lot of work this year on testing our software better and finding quality issues. So I worked closely with Scott Barnes on a process where we went through and looked at our code and put in hints about data types. So if an edition count comes in, but it's a letter, it's a word, not numbers, that's going to break a lot of things, right? So by going through the software and providing types that edition count should be a number, it shouldn't be a word. Scott and I were able to uncover a lot of bugs that had been nested for a long time. And so it's really fun to work as a community together to solve problems that can be complicated to do yourself, but in collaboration with others can be a lot of fun. So that's it for me, Chris Klaus. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And why don't we move to Jim Champ, who is also a member of staff on the Open Library team and deserves an honorary shout out for being the #1 committer on the Open Library project this year. Take it away, Jim.
Hey, thanks, Mac. So I'm Jim Champ. I'm based out of Portland, Oregon. I'm going to be talking about our ongoing books page changes, which I help facilitate with Konstantina, Hayun, and many others. Our account anonymization process, and our librarian merge queue. Okay. So over the year, we've made several book page improvements. First, I'll talk about the performance improvements. Some pages, especially those with like many editions, like our classics, could take up to 30 seconds or more to load. Let me see. A number of components were just slow loading, especially like the editions table, and that was blocking the entire page from loading. So in order to improve this, we added more profiling to identify like all of our slow loading components. Meg did some great work with the editions table to modify it so that borrowable copies are showed initially. That greatly reduced our load times. We also we also loaded like some components from the client side, like our want to read dropper, which took some time to load. Let's see. I'll talk a little bit about our improved. Oh, go back one. Thank you. I'll talk a little bit about our mobile improvements that Konstantina worked very hard on to implement. It was technically difficult. Previously, when you viewed a book page in mobile, you could see maybe an image of the cover if it was available, and you'd have to scroll like quite far to see the book's title and the author name and just useful information about the book.
This was especially gnarly when there was no book cover. You would just see a blank book cover and then borrow options.
Yeah, making it like very difficult to even know what book you were looking at. So that's something that Konstantina put together, and we're very grateful for. Other changes, we pinned the title and the edit button to the top of the page in desktop. So if you're looking at a bunch of different, if you have a bunch of tabs open with different books, you can just easily see what book you're looking at whenever you change tabs. We also we moved a lot of more useful information to the top of the page. So patrons don't have to scroll far to see changes.
Do you mind if I demo that really quickly?
Sure, thanks, Mike.
Sure. So if we go to Open Library and choose Wonder, for instance. Oh. Oh, there's. Then as you scroll down, the title now sticks to the top along with all of the options, so you can jump to the right part of the page. And we can also go into, oops. I think it just switched my screen. How do I get to a different desktop on a Mac? Is there oh, there we go. Three fingers.
Trackpad, swipe left, right, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Multiple
Okay.
fingers.
All right. Well, I'm gonna continue on before I mess up with all the demos. But here we go.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So the next thing I'll talk about is our account anonymization and the patron exports. At the beginning of the year, it just wasn't possible for a patron to close, or I might be incorrect, but they just couldn't deactivate their open library account. And I think we get several requests for that every year. So what we were able to do was to add an account anonymization feature, which maintains the book data that people have provided, but also replaces a patron's name with a randomly generated string. We also added like more exports, so a patron can get a copy of all their data before they anonymize their account, or anytime if they don't want to like deactivate their account. Thanks. And the last thing I'll talk about is our librarian merge request dashboard. So as we import books into Open Library, we do get duplicate records. Previously, we had a Slack channel where librarians would just list a number, like a list of IDs, and more experienced super librarians would copy these IDs into Open Library and like determine if a merge needs to be made or not. Now we made a interface using Journey's integrated librarian environment. Librarians can select records from search results and suggest merges. These merges are placed into a merge request dashboard, which super librarians can easily click the merge button and go to a merge UI and determine if records need to be merged or not. Yep. Oh, and looks like we've reviewed over 20,000 merge requests this year. I think that's it for me. Oh, yes. We're in the process of improving the merge UI. So chat will be, or comments will be a little bit better, and we'll be able to easily sort just from the header of the UI. That's it for me. Thanks for your time.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. And next we'll be hearing from Mark. Take it away.
Oh. I'm Mark. I'm not any kind of fellow or anything. I'm just a regular volunteer. I guess I'm a jolly good fellow. But I'm a semi-retired full-stack developer from back when dinosaurs roamed the web. So I'm just having fun on Open Library and contributing. I'm probably best known as the creator of the Open Library Reader app for iOS and Android, which I invented because I wanted a better way to read books on my tablet. And so that's out there, and it's got tens of thousands of people who've downloaded it, and that's exciting. But on the Open Library, I divide my time up between doing super librarian tasks, managing records and mergers and so forth. I focus especially on public domain stuff, but I'm not too picky. So I'm kind of all over the place. On the development side, I'm particularly interested in the workflows that librarians use and that regular users use as they're trying to contribute and improve the content of the library. So looking at the various tools that we have available. So one of those that I've done on the front end is the autocomplete for subject entries when you're editing a work. If you want to hit the play on that for me. So here's a work, The Great Vengeance of the Ivory Skull, which is a great book. This one didn't have any subject keywords. If you start to type in that, it now pops up some suggestions based on the data that's already in there. And if it needs quotation marks because it has commas, it puts them in there automatically for you. We could add another entry if we want to do something more specific, like American detective and mystery stories. And that one didn't need quotes, so it did the right thing. This particular book takes place in New York City and in Rio de Janeiro, so we can quickly just grab those. And the item that shows up at the top of the list is the most frequently used version of that subject. So as people use this tool, the data that gets put in kind of tends to congregate towards the most recent used values in those. So I think that's going to be helpful going forward, both to make it easier for people to add data in terms of subjects, and also to kind of clean that data up as people work on it. We have a lot more work to do with that as we go forward, but it's a good start. Next slide. Another piece that I spent a fair bit of time on this year was enhancements to the work merging process. Jim talked about kind of how work merges get suggested. There's a tool that librarians use that allows us to see all of the works that have been suggested to be merged together, and allows us to compare values and make sure that everything looks okay with that. I would show it, but it's really not real meaningful if you don't do that work. But it's basically a big spreadsheet that we can work with, and that had been kind of in a experimental development mode for quite a while. Drini was able to wrap it up and get it out on production, and I immediately then tackled it. Go Drini! From the perspective of somebody who actively uses the tool to try to make it more useful. So I applied changes to just improve the overall visual clarity of it and make the data that's presented a little more consistent with what librarians needed in terms of how the data was structured, and improved display of some of the data types that weren't being handled well. There were a number of edge cases that would sometimes crop up that the tool wasn't handling well. If you tried to submit a merge that had works in it that had already been merged, it would just die on you. So I fixed things like that. There were cases where if there were network errors trying to load all of the data that was being displayed, it would just die on you. So it now provides some feedback for that. It also allows us now to include orphaned editions that then aren't associated with works in a request, so that we can merge those as part of a single process, which is a time saver as well. And we had another bug where if you tried to take a work that had more than 50 editions attached to it and merge it into something else, some of those editions would get lost somewhere, and so I spent a little time and fixed that. So just again, taking a tool that we already had and trying to fine tune it so that it was more useful for all the folks who were making use of it. So I'm continuing to look at those kinds of projects, so that it becomes easier and easier for volunteers at a variety of different levels to continue to help improve the data inside Open Library. That's me.
Woohoo! I would also love to invite other folks in between these transitions to unmute and clap and celebrate, or use emojis to react and thank folks for their work. A lot of the people you'll be hearing from are volunteers, and they're even dedicating their time for the celebration. So all across the whole thing, just selfless, and extremely grateful for all of your contributions. Thank you, Mark, for that great presentation. And then I will hand over to Lisa Seberg, who is not only a member of Internet Archive staff, but who has for many years been our lead community librarian on Open Library, and we're extremely lucky to work with her. Lisa, would you like to take it away?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. As Mac mentioned, I am an employee of Internet Archive. I work in the Patron Services Department since about September 2020. Prior to that, I was the community lead librarian since about 2019. And prior to that, I'm not exactly sure when I started volunteering, maybe 2017, 18, somewhere around there. So you can move on. So what do open librarians do? You maybe have a little bit of a sense of that from previous speakers already, but our volunteers help improve our catalog by adding book metadata, tags, descriptions, identifiers such as ISBN or Goodreads IDs. They add author information, such as links to the identifiers for BIAF, which is OCLC, their biographies, their birthdays, and this helps with disambiguations, because there are a lot of authors with the same name. So the more information we have about them, the easier it is to identify oh, that's the Stephen King I want, not the horror writer. I want the one who writes about food. So that's tremendously helpful for anyone who contributes to that. They also help identify duplicate and conflated records. So these two Stephen Kings, that they actually are the same Stephen King, so we want them merged. Or, you know, these other two Stephen Kings, well, they're not the same Stephen King, and we want to separate them and make sure the right works are associated with the right author. Volunteers also identify non-book records. So the import process was mentioned earlier. And sometimes with all of the good stuff comes a little bit of stuff maybe we don't want, such as t-shirts with book characters on them, or stationery, things like this that aren't really in the scope of Open Library. Our librarians help others become volunteers, become active volunteers, and learn how to work within the work with the wiki and understand best practices. And then volunteers also help add images, so the book covers that you see, and then they help curate collections, which I'll talk about more in a moment. I wanted to just note some sample volunteer projects, what some people are working on. This is by no means a complete list. I would need way more slides if I were to talk about everyone that was involved. But we have somebody working, focusing on Spanish language materials. We have a volunteer who's focusing on Ukrainian language materials. We have someone who's interested in comics and graphic novels, which are actually really difficult because of all the similar titles, just different volume names. They're really hard to disambiguate. So a lot of credit there. Another volunteer who's been working tirelessly cleaning up our juvenile literature and working with a lot of the classics, which are also difficult. Someone working on Hebrew works and authors. Someone really dedicated, at least for the past year. I'm hearing, I think every day, a report, getting a report of duplicates of Harlequin romance novels that are also surprisingly tricky to work with because they all have very similar titles. Someone focusing on science and research, Portuguese literature, left-wing alternative movements, and French language comics and graphic novels. So just an example, some people are all-rounders, like myself. So you can pick a flavor, or you can pick all the flavors. It's your preference. And then we have collection pages. So this is a page where titles that are alike in some way are collected together. So for example, all of the Goosebumps, all of the Peanuts books, if you're a fan of Charles Schultz. Went away. But we have our banned books, which is something that's been a hot topic the past couple of years, with all of the book challenges that are going on in various school systems across the US. So one of our volunteers, Travis, has been working on gathering that data from schools and making a collection per school system or per district, so that if students have trouble accessing, for whatever reason, titles in their own school libraries, that they can come to Open Library and hopefully access the titles that they want there. We also have collections for awards. So if someone wants to just browse, I want to see all of the Hugo Award winners, you could do that. Caldecott Medal, the Choose Your Own Adventures, that was another fun one that Travis worked on. There's a Christmas collection, there's a Bibles collection, origami, Peanuts. So it's if you have a particular interest and you're interested in volunteering as a collection specialist, we'd love to hear from you. Next slide, please. But wait, there's more. So our volunteers, besides cleaning up metadata, are also developers. So we have had our librarians have helped translate the site into Spanish, French, German, Ukrainian, Chinese, Portuguese, Croatian, Russian, and Yash created the dropdown so you can actually switch to any of these languages. So thank you for everyone who worked on that. And I do want to give a big thank you to Dee Capella. He's not on the call, but he has been my most dedicated helper, I think, in the past several years. So I didn't want to just let this pass by without acknowledging him specifically for just everything he's done, helping me, helping the other volunteers. Next slide. I think that's, yeah. Well, so Daniel is a super librarian, and then we do have a handful of others, and these are people who are extra dedicated. They're understanding not only able to identify, say, duplicates, but understanding how Open Library works, how the system works, how to recognize when something went wrong by looking at, say, the edit history of something, and helping to point out helping to point out how things can be done better, how to avoid errors when for other volunteers who are suggesting duplicates, for example, or answering questions just that volunteers sometimes have, like, oh, this book has a collection of stories and it has the same title as this other book that has a collection of stories, but they're not the same collection of stories. So are these the same? Are they different? So our super librarians help answer these questions that can be a little bit like splitting hairs at times. So I'm really grateful for everyone who puts the time into not only volunteering, but really learning the system inside and out. So thank you. And I think that is the last slide.
Thank you, Lisa. If you take a look at the previous slide with the merges, I'm going to see if I can open that up, openlibrary.org/merges. Then this is actually showing that these 21,595 merge requests that have been merged by those librarians, those super librarians. So any librarian can make a proposed merge, but they have to be reviewed by a super librarian. So that is, 5 or 6 people who have reviewed close to 22,000 records. So really, they deserve just a huge amount of thanks. And one of the things that Lisa talked about during her presentation was adding grade levels and being able to cultivate juvenile collections, which is something Janae was working on. What I'd like to introduce next is how members of our developer community are applying technology toward librarianship. So I want to briefly introduce, I don't know if Jim Mann or Charles are on the call, but Jim Mann has been leading a very large effort to add code into our import pipelines, which reject content like t-shirts or notebooks or calendars that aren't appropriate for the catalog, and cleaning up information in bulk that may have made it into the catalog. Charles, who's a member of Internet Archive staff and a data engineer, has put a ton of work into improving our catalog for importing MARC records and deserves a huge honorary shout out. And finally, I'd like to play a short video from Teo Chung, who was an Open Library Fellow this year and was able to add sequenced genomes, that is, these little robots that read through books on our behalf and produce these nuggets of insights about the book, like sometimes reading level information or identifying table of contents pages or ISBNs or other useful metadata like n-grams for around 200,000 books. And this effort resulted in more than 12,000 new ISBNs being discovered within the text of the book and then being able to be added into the lending program because we were able to add in missing data. And also, this 12K has increased drastically to 80K. We've now been able to identify around 80,000 Lexile reading level results for various books in the Internet Archive collection. Okay, let me see if I can pull up this video. Otherwise, we'll come back to it. Give me a second. Okay, I'm going to try to play it from here. Folks, let me know if we can hear. Otherwise, I might have to reshare with audio.
I
think you'll need to reshare with audio.
Okay, I will do that now. Thank you very much. Share with audio. All right. Let's try that one more time.
Hi, I'm Teo, and I'm just going to give a short little presentation on some work that I've been doing with Mick over the past few months, working on Lexile reading levels. So our motivation is that Internet Archive books had reading levels, but they only went as low as 5th grade, and we wanted reading levels to include through elementary school. So we decided on Lexile. There were a couple other options and like different reading level formulas, but again, most of them didn't really, like, I think generally the lowest that they reached is through 5th grade, and Lexile was the one that we found that had reading level scores that went from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And also Lexile has a bunch of other useful book data, such as book genre, max age, cover art, and this thing called a high-low designation, which is basically when a book has more adult content, but it's considered simple to read. So what we did in the project, we built a Python program that would take as input an Internet Archive query of books, and from their ISBN identifiers, we would get Lexile information if it existed from the Lexile website. And our results, we ran about 64,000 children's books and got back about 12.5 thousand successful Lexile reading level results. And we also have a working Python program now that can be run on any other current or future children's books or young adult books. And that's everything. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Teo, for your months of hard work on this project. Okay, I would like to also talk a little bit about something special that happens every few years, which is a professor, or in this case, this year, multiple professors, decides to incorporate open source contribution into their university curriculum. And this year we had two different professors, one from AUEB in Greece, in Athens, and the other from NYU, that asked their students to make contributions to open source projects. And Michelle, Crystal, Chloe, Dimitris, Philippos, Vasilis, and Konstantina all decided to work with the Open Library project. So I would love to show off a few of the things that they were able to create together, and then also introduce Konstantina and anyone else from the teams here who happens to be on who would like to say a few words. Notably, of the projects that these folks worked on, we had social cards for Twitter. That is, if you share one of your lists on Open Library using Twitter, how does it show up and render? It used to just show a single book, and you'll see that a little bit more later. We made a lot of improvements there. Another thing is being able to show a trending carousel on the homepage, and then also improving the sharing options on Open Library. So in the past, Open Library showed a whole entire row of different share options, and we've been able to consolidate that into a single share button that then pops up into a modal, and that's due to the great work of Philippos and Dimitris. And then we had several other contributions, like Chloe implemented the Open Library GitHub README in Chinese, so that even more people of different languages and backgrounds can contribute to the project. Crystal made some improvements to the book page navigation, so that when you were on mobile, the navigation bar previously overflowed the website and kind of broke, and Crystal was able to fix that. And Michelle was able to take the the loans page when you had no loans, no active loans, and give patrons an action so that they were no longer in a dead end by recommending a few books. So here's a preview of two of the things that were fixed. One Jim Champ showed earlier, which was if we had a book that had no book cover, then we saw pretty much no metadata, and you had to scroll all the way down, I think 3 different pages worth of scrolling before you got to the title on mobile. And so Konstantina helped us make an intermediary change which was improved by Hayun later, which you'll see, to both have the cover, the title, the author. And then Crystal was able to fix the book page navigation on mobile to work correctly. And then here we're going to see a little preview of improved book sharing. One is you click on the share button now, and it comes up with all of the different options, which is extendable, rather than having all of these different competing options on the page itself. It was beginning to get really busy, and they were all competing for our attention. And on that note, I would love to hand over to Konstantina, who I think deserves a little bit of extra acknowledgement for really going above and beyond, I think, what her course called for, and really just put a ton of time and energy into the efforts that she was working on and proposing additional designs as well. So she was one of this year's honorary Open Library Fellows, and I'm very proud to have you see some of her work right now.
Hello. So I'm Konstantina from Athens University of Economic and Business in Greece, and I will give you more information about the social card contribution that me and Vasilis made the previous month. So there was a need and an open issue about creating a dynamic social card that will include the first 5 books of a user's reading list. First, I started by creating some prototypes that you can see here, and I created them with the Figma application. And I tried different color combinations and different cases for the position of the covers and the text. After the Open Library team selected the prototype, Vasilis and I continued the backend work. Some of the things that we worked on successfully was retrieving the first 5 books of the user's list, manipulate the covers so that they can adjust and look like the prototype, and then create the API endpoint. Right now, I think that we need some help to improve the performance of the card and solve some issues because there are some cases that the card doesn't seem to appear. So here is how the social card used to look like before. And in the next slide, you can see how the card looks now, which is a more pleasant look and more helpful for the user to share their book list in a more interactive way. So last but not least, I want to personally thank Meg and the Open Library team for providing me the feedback and the support throughout the time that I contributed, and of course for giving me the title of Open Library Fellow. I'm really honored to receive it. Thank you.
Oh, wow, it's certainly our pleasure. And I know I see Michelle on the call as well. Michelle is another student who did fantastic work at NYU. I'm so happy that you were able to make time. Do you want to just say a few words and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm like extremely like lucky to like have chosen and like stumbled onto Open Library. It's like the highlight of my college career, and I like talking about it with my friends all the time. And I'm just like very lucky and grateful for all that's been done here. Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm so glad you were able to join us. And next, I would like to offer a little bit of an introduction here. So, and there's also a blog post where you can read more about Hayun's work, as it's going to be very hard to fit it in just a minute or two. But this year we had a kind of a special opportunity. Typically, when we're able, Open Library participates in a program with the Internet Archive called Google Summer of Code. It's where Google will sponsor an engineer to work on an open source project for the summer, and they pay a stipend, and it's typically an engineering role as opposed to design or anything else. And as a fairly engineering centric organization, at least for Open Library, we've kind of had an imbalance of engineering efforts to product and design efforts. And this year, we weren't able to participate in Google Summer of Code. And so we asked our community for help funding an Open Library Summer of Code position. And an extremely generous anonymous donor contributed a few $1,000s to fund a position. And we were kind of stunned because we thought we were going to get a bunch of people, contributing enough for maybe a month of work. And so this year we decided to do something different, which was to put those resources toward an individual who could really fuel momentum on a design effort, just to help us bring all of our Open Library resources out of static drawings and into Figma documents where we could rapidly prototype and work together and have discussions. And I was just so delighted that we were able to work with Hayun Trey this year on Open Library, and we're able to improve the books page, but also to found an Open Library Friday design call and come up with the start of a design style document. So I would love to now introduce you to Hayun to take it away and talk a bit about her work.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Hayun, and I am currently a senior at attending Carnegie Mellon University, and I worked as a design fellow over this summer for Open Library. And yeah, my main task was to just work on the books page on mobile version. Yeah. Just starting off, like, I think there was like no Figma version of the book page or the website itself. So I think I just worked on like making a Figma prototype or mockups, and then just in terms of redesigning the book page, I just made a lot of iterations and gathered feedback. And with the feedback, I made like more iterations. Yeah, and that's what I've spent a chunk of my time working here. And while I'm iterating, we also, as Meg mentioned before, we like started to think about like the consistency and like the visual identity of the Open Library to give more, I guess, like, yeah, like a brand identity, and make sure that it's readable and just usable for everyone using the website itself. So that's something that I also focused on. And when I was able to come up with some iterations that I wanted to test with, I used this tool called Maze, where I was able to gather feedback from the users remotely. And because it was done remotely, a lot of people were able to participate. So I was able to get more than 700 responses from the actual patrons, which was really great and helpful. And yeah, so I think this is the above default redesign that I was able to make. And yeah, there were some changes made to it. Like I made the book cover size a bit bigger, the title a bit more readable but smaller in size. The sharing button was made a bit more prominent so that people can easily share more easily. And yeah, I tried to make sure that like the borrow button and like the tabs, the top navigation and like other preview and like the CT buttons were more noticeable so that users can use them a bit more easily, basically. And yeah, just in general, it would be nice just to like code this thing out. I know Jim is like helping me a lot, and Meg was also really helpful, and actually everyone in the team was super helpful throughout the whole time. So yeah, it would be nice if this can be actually coded out to the final version or on the actual website. And thank you.
Absolutely, and that's up next. Thank you so much, Hayun, for all of your hard work in really seeding the design culture that we were able to build this year, and I can't wait for the community to continue that. So really nice work, and thank you for making the time to join us between classes and to talk about what's next on the design momentum for Open Library this year, I would love to introduce you to Dana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana. I am a UX design fellow with Open Library currently, and I'm working on transitioning into UX from a computer science and psychology background. And I really love books and reading, so I was very excited to get involved with Open Library. And it's been a really great experience to get some more experience while working in a very welcoming and supportive community. So my project, continuing with the design momentum, was to work on improving the main site navigation. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Perfect. So my goal for my project was to improve the current site navigation, and I was focusing on reorganizing the hamburger menu and the My Books part of the website, just to make it a little bit more concise and easier for patrons to find what they're looking for. So right at the beginning of my project, before I started doing any research or redesigns, this is what the navigation menu looked like. It had a browse and more drop down. But we decided that more is kind of ambiguous and didn't exactly indicate what would be found in that dropdown. So then right before I started research, we changed the navigation menu to be My Books and Browse. And the My Books page just links to the loans page. And then from there, users could either navigate to a different page or use the hamburger menu. So this is also what the hamburger menu looked like at the beginning. So as you can see, the My Books items like loans and reading log were kind of interspersed with profile settings, log out, things like that. And there's also still that kind of ambiguous more heading as well. So I wanted to do some research with patrons and also wanted to test out a few potential solutions that I came up with that might make things a little bit more organized. So the two things that I kind of focused on for that first research was a My Books dropdown. So as you can see in this image, I thought that would allow users to go straight to the page in My Books that they were looking for and give them a little bit more control. And then I also wanted to reorganize the hamburger a little bit to allow users to see like profile settings and logout up top to make them easier to find, and then also make the hamburger menu consistent with the navigation menu. So having My Books and Browse. And then you can also see at the bottom that I split more into contribute and resources to, again, just make it a little bit easier for people to find what they were looking for at a glance. So I did some research, and it was really great to hear that patrons did like having a lot more control over where in My Books they were going. So that was really helpful. And then they also liked the reorganized hamburger. However, when we were thinking about actually implementing this design, we realized that there would be some balance that have to be struck between having a lot of items in a My Books dropdown without making the hamburger menu very crowded, because we wanted them to be consistent, but we didn't want the hamburger menu to become very long. So thankfully, kind of at the same time I was working on this project, Sam, who you'll hear from next, was also working on a design project with the mobile My Books page. And so we decided that instead of going down the My Books dropdown and hamburger route, maybe we could go towards a new direction and have a My Books landing page on desktop as well. So that was kind of the new direction that we switched gears to a little bit. So if you go to the next slide, you can see the idea that we're thinking of as like the first step. I created this My Books landing page. So at a glance, patrons can still see loans, currently reading, want to read. At a glance, they still have the sidebar that they're used to go to other pages. And then that way in the hamburger menu, we could keep things a little bit more concise and just have one link that says My Books. And then for the first couple months after this change, we could also have that subheading that you see that says loans, reading log, lists, just so patrons who are used to coming to the site and knowing where to find things in the hamburger aren't confused that some items have been removed. So this is our first next step. Eventually, we'd love to make this page more dynamic. So I actually have a little Figma prototype mocked up that shows you that eventually we'd like to have things like a reading stats summary just to make the page a little bit more dynamic and visual. So I'm happy to kind of walk you through the prototype a little bit as well in the link. Kind of just to show you the direction that hopefully we'll get to soon. I'm still working on refining the exact design, but as you can see, once it loads, it will start with a reading stat summary right at the top. So a quick little banner just to have something more interesting for users to interact with. It'll also show the reading goal, and then they can still see all of their typical My Books items. And then each link at the top of each heading is still a link, so they could just click on loans and get straight to their loans page the way that they might expect to. So thank you so much. And as I said, something that was really important when I was working on this My Books page was keeping it consistent with mobile. So I'd love to pass it along to Sam, who's going to give you a little bit more detail about his work with the mobile My Books page.
This is awesome. And I just want to take a chance also to celebrate the completely fantastic work that Dana has done. I think it's clear just how much Dana has thought about the impact of the different decisions that she's been making. Things that might seem simple, like making a change in a navigation menu, really do have a huge amount of impact, and making these things consistent, and even having strategies for how we are going to implement them over time, so that during a period of time where there's a transition, people who are used to it the previous way have a way to understand it still. Is just extremely thoughtful, and very grateful to have all the hard work that you've put into this. And Sam, I can't wait to now hear from you about the My Books page redesign for mobile, which led to this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm happy to go into that. So hi everyone, my name's Sam. I have been wearing a couple different hats over the past few years. I was a computer science teacher at a high school in New York, where I'm based, in Brooklyn specifically. And I'm now fully freelance, which has opened me up to volunteer on open source projects that I'm really passionate about, like the Internet Archive's Open Library. So here we are. And I'm trying to sort of build a freelance practice of designing and also front-end web development. So this is part of that, but it's also something that I'm really, that has been a really meaningful and fun thing to get involved in as a fellow. So I'm really appreciative of this community welcoming me and helping me get started working on My Books. So we can take a look at how My Books has changed on mobile. Where it started was kind of, so the thing on the left, that was the mobile interface when we got started on this. The main issue being that we have this sidebar on desktop and we have all this content on desktop, and there just isn't enough real estate to have them side by side. So originally we have this sidebar just kind of right at the top of the page, which is fairly confusing because it's difficult to see that there's stuff below that. These are not interactive screenshots, but they're both separately scrollable. So if you try to swipe in the menu, you'll start scrolling down through the menu. But if you want to see the rest of the actual landing page of My Books, you'd have to swipe from the bottom of the screen. We did a very, very, very minor temporary fix here as we work towards iterating and implementing a better solution to reworking this page. But the kind of temporary interim fix is just darkening the menu and making it resizable. This doesn't really solve the problem, though, of having a really confusing and hard to understand interface. So if we look at the next slide, we can see the kind of beginning direction of where we're moving. The basic idea is we're taking the whole sidebar from the desktop interface and just making that the mobile interface, but adding in some additional content and sort of restructuring it to make it more understandable, more clearly understandable and discoverable, and as a result, more usable. I have more specific screenshots, but let's just look at the prototype on Figma. So this is the landing page here, and the way we're planning on implementing this is basically just having a responsively designed sidebar so that when we see on that someone is accessing the My Books page from mobile, we're just going to resize the sidebar, hide everything that's normally on the My Books landing page, and then make visible all of these previews for the contents of the reading logs and lists. Now you might notice it doesn't say reading log anymore. We don't have these titles, loans and holds, and reading log. We're basically just kind of putting everything under the umbrella of My Books, and we're showing the user their books. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a separate section here for stats. And then there's also, so you can see also at the bottom of the My Books section, there's also some things that are considered lists in the current structure. Now, this is something that we need to get some more feedback on. I don't know that this structure is 100% final, but we really like the idea of having My Books actually just meaningfully refer to all of the books associated with that user's account, whether it's loans, they're currently reading, want to read, already read, which used to be referred to as the reading log, or their individual lists that they may have created. So we have their books, and then we have a separate section under that for their stats. And if you click on currently reading, we can see what it would look like to go to a specific reading log page, very much the same as it pretty much looks now, except we have these different breadcrumbs so that we sort of eliminate the need for the sidebar on mobile. When you're going to specific logs and lists, you'll still be able to access all the other logs and lists or stats pages that you might want to be able to access just from that convenient dropdown. It was whether it was a log or a list, if you would see the currently reading, want to read, already read, or if you would see a selection of your account's lists. But that's the basic idea here is we want to make it very easy and convenient for people to move between these different lists or logs without having overly confusing labels such as reading log. So yeah, that's basically it. I think the next slide is basically just a screenshot of that same kind of experience flow, which pretty much maps out how a user would interact with this new My Books page. Where we're at with this now, I think we are ready to start kind of implementing a V1 or beta version of this, but we still would very much welcome more feedback. So I think I can just talk a little bit about that, but I think Matt can elaborate further. But yeah, giving feedback is always super welcome and makes the process faster and more effective. But also, I think there's room for people to work on implementing this, especially from the back end. I'm planning on doing some work on the front end of this, but definitely would love for more people to get involved on this project.
Way to go, Sam. This is really fantastic. The thing that other folks don't know is that as I'm watching this presentation, some of the slides have changed, and so things that we had previously identified as areas have now been resolved in interesting ways, and it's just amazing to be working with folks like Sam and Dana who just do such great work. I'm so proud to introduce our next fellow, Scott Barnes. Are you with us, Scott?
Your audio isn't coming through.
Well, as we are trying to get the audio, I'm hoping you'll just unmute Scott and you can cut into my intro. Scott was originally a lawyer who has been transitioning into a software engineering role. And he's worked with several different law firms in the past trying to bridge that gap by building technologies and services. And one of the things that I recall Scott saying is, I've worked on a handful of projects, but it felt like many of them didn't actually get used. And so it would be really nice to work on a platform or something that I really care about. That is also a project which is really practical and usable. And at least from what I've seen these past few months, Scott has done just a phenomenal job of working with Trini and others.
No.
Yes.
Does it? Okay, yeah, sorry, I have to, I don't know. I'm not even using my headphones. It's going through a different audio. All right, let's try this again. So I'm Scott Barnes. Thank you for the introduction. I found Open Library. I was looking for out-of-print climbing guides. And if you'd asked me a few months ago why I'm contributing, I would have said it's because I believe in making knowledge as widely available as possible. And also on a more practical level, I'm looking at, as mentioned, not being a lawyer anymore. And I thought if I contribute to someone else's projects, maybe that would help me make an experience and show a potential employer I could be an engineer and not just a lawyer. But now I realize I'm contributing because although it may sound like hyperbole, working on this project has been the absolute most fun it had in probably the last 5 years or so. Everyone is super nice. I get the joy of working on puzzles all day, and doing so towards an end that may benefit people can't be beat. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So speaking of working towards ends that may benefit people, I've chosen to talk about two of my recent contributions, one of which is reading log search, and the other is linking about 95,000 books, lendable books to Open Library. So with respect to the reading log search, this allows patrons to, for example, I should say the reading log rather allows patrons to keep track of books they want to read, they've read, or that they are reading. And some users might have not just hundreds, potentially thousands of books. And without search, you had to page through them 25 results at a time. So it might take quite a long time if you're trying to figure out all the books you've read by a particular author. So what this feature does is allows patrons to use Solr to search reading logs by title or author. I'm sorry, so you have to search a reading log by title or author or any key that Solr supports. And while doing this, I also realized we could make the reading log use Solr results all the way through. So we were able to remove some, I think, 2 extra queries from the templates. So that should speed things up a bit. And I think this is also, it's currently only on testing, so it's not quite live yet. So it's almost there. And then the other one is adding these books, the lendable books, to the library. And this involved parsing Open Library data and Internet Archive data, the dumps specifically, and then importing all of that data into an SQLite database, and then running a query to look for Internet Archive items that had only one ISBN 13 that linked to Open Library, to an Open Library edition, but for which that edition did not link back to Internet Archive. So the idea is we're looking for links that Internet Archive pointed to Open Library, but Open Library didn't point back. And you might ask, why only one ISBN 13? That was because, you know, we're doing this automatically and we're trying to eliminate things that aren't books, such as maybe like journals or things like that. And why ISBN 13 is because we could convert 10 to 13. And then we'd have one ISBN we could compare on both sides to see, well, they match, so they're probably the same. And that finished up sometime early this morning. So those 95,000, I don't know the exact number, roughly those books are all added now. So if somebody wants to borrow them, they'll show up when they query. If they look it up on Open Library, they'll see the link to Internet Archive. And so finally, I just want to thank Mech and Dreamy for helping with the reading log search. And then again, Mech and Dreamy, or Dreamy and Mech, for helping add all these books, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do any of it. And then the final slide here on contributing. If anyone wants to help for some reason, there are more books to be mined from these data dumps. And the tool I wrote to do all that parsing actually runs really fast. You have a lot of cores, even though there's like, I don't know, 10 gigabytes of data or something. You can shoot through it in just 10 minutes. The link's there. And then soon you'll be able to go to account/books and see the reading log search. So that's it for me. Thanks.
All right. Sorry it took me so long to get to the right demo. This was the reading log search. Now on your currently reading, already read, and want to read pages, you have a search box which allows you to, instead of having to scroll through what in some cases dozens of pages for the book that you care about, you can now do a search for something like the art of possibility, and it just pops right up. So it's just a huge improvement on something that would have been so hard to do manually. And I know that both Trini and Scott put a lot of time and energy into this, and I'm so excited to see more than 90,000 books that are on archive.org make it into the Open Library catalog as new lendable options. Congratulations and really nice work, Scott. Thank you for all of your hard work. Trini, you're up next.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll plus one with Max said. Yeah, Scott's been doing a terrific job, and it's always fun to chat with you about miscellaneous coding things or about whatever. So it's, yeah, super excited to have you on the team and doing work, which I think is super impactful. All right, hello everyone. My name is Trini. I'm also a staff member at Open Library, like Mike, Jim, and the others at the beginning there. The stuff that I mainly work on is search stuff, and I have a slide for that afterwards, but I'm going to start with some of the little things. Oh, I'm based in Toronto, so hello from Toronto. So to the folks who are going outside in shorts and tank tops, I envy you very, very much. It's quite chilly here now. The leaves are starting to fall off the trees. They're no longer pretty. But so yeah, the stuff that I've been working on, one of the projects I worked on with Mac and with Isa, who's on the archive team, was adding a Google sign-in button to OpenLibrary, which had a really lovely impact on registrations. So registrations have jumped by 1.75x, and now 56%. It's raining in San Francisco. Wow, that's exciting. That's a rare event. And it's 56% of all registrations now are using the Google sign-in button. And you can see in the little chart there that the yellow color is what's being done by Google sign-in. Another sort of little project I worked on was improving our barcode scanner, which is a feature which we don't link to terribly well yet. We're going to add a link to it in the header before end of year, but which lets you scan a barcode on the back of a book. And now it also lets you scan a written ISBN. So it has an OCR option, so it'll let you read that up. Yeah, and then I'll talk about webbooks at the end. So yeah, go to the next slide. Thank you, Mick. So edition-aware search, this one's a little, it's one of those things that once it's there, it makes sense, and it's weird to think about it not being there, but I'll try to explain sort of what it does. So basically, it makes searching aware that there are editions inside works. So the stuff that you can do now is if you search for Harry Potter and your account is set to view the UI in French, you'll see search results matching the Harry Potter in French. Did I break the link there? Put the right thing. So it'll show, for example, yeah, there we go. So because the UI is in French and the search term Harry Potter is sufficiently vague and it doesn't match a specific edition, it'll surface the French editions first. So that's one of the things that's now possible.
And just as an aside, over the course of the last 5 years, perhaps the top 3 points of feedback that we've gotten from Jeff Kaplan from patron services is that patrons who are searching for a book cannot find the book in their language, even when they scroll down and they select the right language from the list. And that's because previously, when we selected the language, we were showing the works which included an edition of that language, but we had no way of actually promoting the exact matching edition. So this just helps us get the extra level of not only the right edition, but is that edition available in the language or the edition that you care about? Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Trini.
No, please. It's I always have trouble explaining it, so more perspectives the better. Yeah, so that's one of the things that's now possible. The other thing that's possible, because we're now edition aware, if you do a search for like publisher standard ebooks, it'll now show the standard ebooks edition of the work. So you'll see the standard ebooks cover, you'll see the standard ebooks read option, and that was previously just not possible on our search pages. Yeah, if you want to demo that one, here we go. So all the lovely standard ebooks with their very signature covers and with read links going directly to standard ebooks.
Do you want to explain the icon on the right here?
Oh, so Standard eBooks is one of our trusted book providers, which is basically a third-party provider that creates books, or that has books, so similar to the Internet Archive. Standard eBooks is another one. So we try to promote traffic to these trusted book providers where they can get the content directly, and also drive traffic to these awesome sites who are doing all this wonderful work. In this case, cleaning up and making just super high quality modern ebooks of classic publishing. That's one example. So another thing that we can now do is we can do sort of intersections, which we could never do before. In the past, it was impossible to search for German books that were borrowable or public, because the search results would only find you works which had a German edition and which also had a borrowable edition, but not necessarily one that had an edition that was both in German and borrowable. So now that's possible, and that'll work out of the box. And sort of in the same vein, we can do, there we go. We can do, like, if you're looking to learn German and you want to listen to some audiobooks, you can find LibriVox published by LibriVox in German, and now it'll surface whatever the Zeichen der the something for study of four, that's it, and by Arthur Conan Doyle. But you'll see the German title because that's what you're looking for. And then the last thing that's possible is even without using any keywords or advanced search features, if your search term better matches a specific edition. So here the UI, the user's language isn't set to French, but because their search term matches the French copy, the French edition, it'll surface that instead of something else. So that's another thing that's now possible. That was not possible before.
Also, I think Drini might be underselling this point in particular, because this is straight magic. So because the patron has searched for a title in another language, and because most works have an English title, or many works have an English title, the algorithm now checks not only the work, but every edition inside, and sees if there's a specific edition that matches against the title best. And this just magically means we're able to, by default, without any special knowledge of the search engine, recommend the exact edition in the right language that the patron cares about. And this is just a massive, massive game-changing upgrade for the year. Really, if we could have achieved one thing this year, I think this is an extremely high leverage thing for our community. So I really want to celebrate the work that it's been a long haul to get there. And I think the feature was definitely worth it. It was a hard thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate everyone's patience. And speaking of patience, this feature is still in beta, and it's hidden behind a feature flag. But there are little hooks you can go through to use it. But yeah, after the community event, that's top priority for my work on openlibrary. And then the last thing is something we worked on for the demos in physical land in San Francisco, Library Leaders Forum, was web books. So a lot of books are just published by their authors directly on the internet. And those books never exist in library catalogs, and there's no way for people to find them easily as a book, because they're always seen as web pages. So webbooks is a way for us to have links directly to these carefully curated books. Yeah, if we go to that first search result there, and they appear very similar to trusted book providers. So you'll see all of these books, and if you click on any of these read buttons, this is a book that's published by the author directly on their website for people to read. So now Open Library patrons can also access and know that there's a copy of this book that they can read immediately online. And the way that we're kind of getting these books, because we're being very strict to make sure that these are like high quality and safe books, is through this form. So if you know of web books which fit the description, please add them in. And this is you can go to this URL as well to find links to it. Yeah, and so that was work with Mech and Jim as well. And one last thing I want to add, not related to web books, but yeah, so this year has been kind of interesting. So it's been like 1, 2, or like 10 years of pandemic now. I can't quite recall. But this year was interesting because we were able to have physical things for the first time in a long time. So in October we had our Internet Archive event, and I was able to meet Jim Champ for the first time, although we've been working together for a few years now. And I was able to meet Scott, who we've been working for a few months. And of course, Meg, who I met a few years ago, I was able to see him again. I hadn't seen him forever. And then coincidentally, I happened to be in Amsterdam earlier in the year as well, and got to meet Lisa, who I've been working with even longer, and I'd never met in person. And Amsterdam was lovely. It's such a whirlwind adventure. I loved being there. I got to meet her, Bjorn, Antigone, and Ace, and it was just, yeah, fantastic time. So yeah, just very happy to be here. Happy to be meeting folks in person. Happy to work with everyone.
Thanks so much, Trini. As I promised, I want to wrap up in a minute or so. I said 90 minutes, and I want to keep that promise. So I'm going to skim through the things that I did and give us some next steps. But mostly, let's keep this as a celebration for the rest of the community who's just done amazing work this year. So my main accomplishments for this year have been trying to work with a bunch of designers on facilitating a design process and creating a design system document, which you saw a little bit earlier. This spans the books page, my books, main site navigation, and the librarian merge queue. I've also been doing the best I can to support and celebrate a few of our fellows, including Teo, Dana, Samuel, Hayun. I've done my share of reviewing code, about 250 merge requests. And then in terms of products, I've tried to work on the trending books APIs, the unified search page navigation, which I can show you right here. You used to do a search, and then there was no way really to switch from, oh, I actually meant to search for an author, or searching inside. And now everything that appears in this dropdown now appears as a selectable tag here. So if I search for Tolkien as a book, then I can just click author and it will show all of my results. I also helped write a bot that has fixed around 15,000 stale redirects. I mentioned with Jim that we had created an interface for merging works. Well, what happens over time if you merge a lot of works is some of the IDs that used to reference them become stale. And so this bot goes through and basically gives a little bump to make sure that all of their IDs are current. And then finally, we had some book server search OPDS stuff, which I'm not going to really talk about right now, but I'm happy to talk about offline if folks want to learn more about book server. On that note, I would love to share a few details about next year. We haven't solidified on anything yet, but given that we've done so much to kind of go down a journey of helping build patronage on Open Library and polishing the experience, this next year we've been discussing how can we understand the core audiences who are using Open Library more effectively. So for a long time, it's been pretty clear what we've had to build because we were the underdog, and services like Libby or Goodreads have really polished examples of what people are asking for. But we're hitting a part in our existence where the needs of our patrons are really unique, and they need things that are different from Open Library than they need from other services on the web. So this year, I hope we can listen. And the planning for our roadmap is actually online and public, so anyone can leave notes. And you can join in our upcoming community calls. Today, this celebration was actually during one of our normal community call times, Tuesday at 9 a.m. So any week, you're welcome to join us. And this Friday, we will have a design call at 9 a.m. And then if you'd like to participate, we have a volunteer page you can click through, a GitHub that you can read through, and also an easy link to Good First Issues. After this celebration, there's a link here to a gather town where anyone who does want to spend a little bit of time walking around a virtual library and chatting together is welcome to do so. And I'll be there, and can't wait to follow up and just hear how some of you have been. And on that note, I just want to say thank you very much, Open Library contributors and patrons, for all of you've done throughout the year and in the past to help Open Library run successfully. And on that note, I'll stop sharing and stop